Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going way back, early Cretaceous. We're looking at this really amazing dinosaur.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
Our main source is a 2010 paper, scientific paper, from the Royal Society B. We'll pull in some other bits too, to flesh it out. And our mission really is for you to get a good handle on this giant bird-like dinosaur. It's called Beishanlong.
Beishanlong, yeah.
We want to cover its discovery, what it tells us about its relatives, but without getting bogged down in super technical jargon.
Exactly. Think of it as the essential guide.
Yeah, your shortcut to understanding this important find.
So, Beishanlong grandis, that's the full name. And it sounds pretty epic, right?
It does.
And for good reason. Beishan, that's Chinese for North Mountains. And long, well, that means dragon.
North Mountains dragon? Okay, I like it.
Yeah, and grandis, that's just Latin for large. So, large North Mountains dragon. And the key thing here really is when it lived. It's relatively early for its family, the Ornithomimosaurs, but it was already huge, which raises some interesting questions about how size evolved in these bird mimic dinosaurs.
Right, the bird mimics. So North Mountains, when exactly was this dragon roaming around?
Okay, so we're talking late Aptian stage, that's early Cretaceous period, roughly, say, 125 to 113 million years ago, give or take.
A long time ago. And where were the fossils actually found in those North Mountains?
Pretty much northwestern China, Gansu province, and the specific site. It's called White Ghost Castle.
White Ghost Castle?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Quite a dramatic name, isn't it, for a fossil site?
That definitely sticks in your mind. Okay, so why is Beishanlong such a big deal? Why is it so significant?
Well, it's that combination of its size and how early it shows up in the fossil record. That's what makes it really important. See, Beishanlong is actually the second biggest ornithomimosaur we know of.
Second biggest. Wow. What's number one?
That would be Deinocheirus, a much later and, frankly, very, very weird dinosaur.
Ah, okay. Heard of that one.
So finding something almost that big, but much earlier, well, it suggests that getting massive wasn't just some late trend for these guys. Maybe it happened earlier than we thought.
Interesting. So how did they actually find Beishanlong? What's the discovery story?
The main discoveries happened pretty recently, actually, early 21st century, 2006, 2007. There were three main fossil finds. The most important one is called the holotype.
The holotype, right. That's like the main example, the reference specimen.
Exactly. Kind of the Rosetta Stone for the species. It gets a catalog number, FRDCGSGJ06 or 118. It's a partial skeleton, which is great, but unfortunately, no skull.
Ah, no skull. That always feels like a big missing piece, doesn't it?
It really does. Skulls tell you so much. But we still got a lot of information.
So what else did they find? You mentioned other specimens.
Yeah, the paratypes. These are other fossils that help, fill in the picture. They found parts of the hind limbs and a pair of pubes. That's part of the hip area. Those are cataloged as FRDCGSJB, so 70101. And there's actually another interesting bit, a set of foot bones. IVPP V12756. They were found way back in 1999. They weren't sure at first, but now they're tentatively assigned to Beishanlong too. So the picture sort of came together over time.
Like putting together a giant ancient jigsaw puzzle.
Pretty much.
So who are the paleontologists involved who put this puzzle together?
It was a joint effort. Researchers from China and the U.S., people like Peter Makovicki, Li Daiking, Gao Kekin, Matthew Lewin, Gregory Erickson, and Mark Norell. Quite a team.
Right.
They actually announced the name online first, I think in 2009. But the official scientific paper, the description, came out in print in January 2010.
So from digging in White Ghost Castle to a published scientific name, that's quite the journey for some old bones.
Definitely.
Now, let's get back to that size you mentioned. It sounds impressive. How big are we talking? Like, bigger than a car? A truck?
Oh, yeah, bigger than a car. Probably longer than many trucks. The estimates put it roughly in the same size class as the very largest Gallimimus.
Gallimimus. Those are the ones from Jurassic Park, right? The flocking ones.
Those are the ones. The big ones could reach maybe 8 meters long. Think like a really long minibus or a short school bus.
Wow. Okay, so Beishanlong was up there.
Yeah. The lean specimen, the holotype we talked about, the estimates for that individual are between, say, 5.9 and 7 meters long. That's roughly 19 to 23 feet.
7 meters.
And weight-wise, maybe somewhere between 375 and 626 kilograms. So, 800 to nearly 1,400 pounds. Definitely hefty.
Up to nearly 1,400 pounds. That's substantial. And you mentioned this individual wasn't even fully grown.
That's right. That's another really cool part of the study.
How do they know that? Can you tell from the bones?
You can, yeah. It's called histology. They took a thin slice of one of the leg bones, the fibula, and under a microscope, they could see growth lines, like tree rings, basically.
Ah, like tree rings. That's cool.
Exactly. They counted 13 or 14 of these lines. This tells us how old it was, roughly. And the spacing of the outer lines suggested its growth was starting to slow down, but it hadn't stopped completely.
So a subadult, like a massive teenager.
Pretty much. A giant teenager, still with some growing potential.
Wild. So what did it look like overall? Besides being huge, you said robust?
Yeah, the bones suggest a fairly sturdy build, not delicate. It had long arms, long legs, typical for ornithomimosaurs, but a key difference compared to some later ones. Its hands and feet weren't super elongated, and its claws weren't extremely long or specialized either.
Okay, so less bird-like in the limbs than some of the later ones.
Kind of. It suggests maybe a more primitive, or let's say less derived condition within the group. A more ancestral body plan, perhaps.
Got it. So big, relatively early, sturdy build, less specialized limbs. Where does that place Beishanlong on the big dinosaur family tree? Who are its closest relatives?
Well, the original paper, the 2010 one, placed it in what we call a basal position within Ornithomimosauria.
Basal, meaning sort of near the bottom of that group's branch, an early offshoot.
Exactly. Like it branched off before many of the more famous groups, like the Ornithomimidae family, Gallimimus, Struthiomimus, etc. They found it was closely related to another early one called Harpymimus. These two seem to form a little group just below Gallimimus and the main Ornithomimosaur branch.
Okay, so an early player. But I think you mentioned there was some newer research. Did that change things?
It did, yeah. Science keeps moving, right?
Yeah.
A study in 2014 took another look at the relationships. And that analysis suggested something different. It actually grouped Beishanlong within a family called Deinocheiridae.
Deinocheiridae. So related to Deinocheirus, the really big, weird one.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
In that analysis, Beishanlong came out as basal, or an early member within that Deinocheiridae family.
Yeah.
Sort of an ancestor or early cousin to the group, containing Gallimimus and Deinocheirus.
Huh. That's quite a shift. From just generally basal to maybe being part of the lineage leading to Deinocheirus.
It is. And it's fascinating because it connects this early giant more directly to the later supergiant, Deinocheirus. Hints at some really interesting evolutionary pathways there, maybe involving gigantism appearing multiple times earlier than thought.
Right. So just to step back for folks, Ornithomimosauria, remind us what defines that group. We keep saying bird mimics.
Sure. So Ornithomimosauria is a group within the theropods.
Theropods, the two-legged meat eaters mostly, like T-Rex.
Exactly. Though Ornithomimosaurs were likely omnivores or herbivores.
Yeah.
But yeah, same larger group that includes T-Rex and actually modern birds too. Ornithomimosaurs are generally known for being bird-like in shape, usually fast runners, bipedal, long necks, small heads, and often toothless beaks like an ostrich.
Ostrich mimics, bird mimics, got it. So how does finding Beishanlong change our understanding of this whole group? What's the big takeaway?
Well, the big thing is that combination again. Its large size and its fairly early, or basal, position in the group's history. Finding such a large animal so early on, it gives us crucial clues about how the group diversified, how they evolved different body sizes. It really suggests that large body size wasn't just something that happened late in their evolution, it was possible much earlier. It challenges some of the simpler narratives, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. It wasn't necessarily a simple progression from small to big.
Right. Evolution is often much messier and more interesting than that.
Okay, so let's recap. Beishanlong, a major player. Huge ornithomimosaur, early Cretaceous China.
Found in the early 2000s at White Ghost Castle.
Right. And it helps us understand the early evolution of size and relationships in this bird mimic group, possibly even connects to the story of the later giant, Deinocheirus.
That sums it up pretty well. And its discovery, like so many fossil finds, just underscores how much we're still learning. Paleontology is constantly uncovering things that reshape the story of life.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive on Beishanlong, maybe a final thought for you, the listener. Finding a giant like this, so relatively early in its group's family tree, it really makes you question those neat evolutionary stories we sometimes tell, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that groups always start small and get big later or always become more specialized over time, Beishanlong kind of shakes that up.
It does. It suggests maybe some groups experiment with large size early on or follow different paths.
So the question is, what other surprises are out there? What other massive creatures or unexpected evolutionary twists are still buried, waiting to be found?
Makes you wonder what other dragons might still be hiding in those North Mountains or elsewhere, right?
Exactly. Definitely food for thought.